waiting for everyone to join. I can see the numbers going up. Hi everyone who's joined us. We're just waiting for everyone to come into the room. And I'll make a start. Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to start with introductions. My name's Manli. I'm the programme producer at RTYDS. I'm joined by our Artistic Director, Sue Emma, and also our Associate Artistic Director, Anthony Blau. We also have two BSL interpreters in the session. We've got Laura and Erin. Some housekeeping to start off with. We're going to start off with the 18-month residency Q&A. That's going to run roughly until about 3:45. Then we'll have a 5-minute break and we'll start with the CV workshop. We have closed captions there via Otter, and I've posted the link into the chat box. We're going to answer the questions that have been submitted in advance first, and then there's like a little Q&A box at the bottom of the screen that you'll be able to see. So we'll open to live questions at around 3:15, and you can ask any question anonymously if you want to. And the final thing is that this session is being recorded, so you'll be able to access it afterwards on our RTYDS YouTube channel. I'll get started with the questions. I know we're all here for the same reason, to find out more about the 18-month residency. But Sue, I wondered whether you wanted to give us a quick overview of who the partners are for this round.
Brilliant. Thank you, Manli. So just to say that we're working in partnership with Ramps on the Moon, as we did with the opportunity we had for an 18-month residency at Contact. And they're really important partners because they're helping ensure that what we're doing is accessible to deaf and disabled artists. And also it's our undertaking that at least one of the placements will be to a deaf and disabled artist across all of the 4 opportunities that we're offering this year. The 3 theatres we're working with in this round are Curve in Leicester, Derby Theatre, obviously in Derby, and also for the first time we've got a joint opportunity in Newcastle with Northern Stage and Live Theatre. So those 2 organisations are working together to give that person an opportunity to work in both of those organisations over this 18-month period.
Brilliant. So we've introduced a new process to apply for the 18-month residencies. And what was our thinking behind this new process?
I guess the main thing is we were responding to the focus groups that we've run, but also we've been part of discussions with Freelancers Make Theatre Work and the Freelance Task Force. And it was really just in recognition of the amount of work that it takes to fill in these applications. And so we wanted to relook at the process that we're asking artists to go through, and also for them to feed in. And so in this instance, we came up with an expression of interest. So there's less questions. They're hopefully still questions that people will enjoy finding responses to. So we wanted to reduce the amount of questions, but still we needed enough information to go on so that we can make sure that the process is robust. So we're making informed decisions about the artists that are expressing an interest in the 18-month residency.
And because the expression of interest is 3 questions and a CV, someone's asked what we're hoping to find out from those.
I'll do this one, Anthony, and then you do the next couple. Then we'll go alternate, yeah?
Cool. Sounds good.
Always good to organise these things in advance. So I think really those questions are basically, what work do you want to make? Why do you want to make it? What do you want to learn from this experience in particular of being based in a building for 18 months, or in one instance 2? And also just a bit about your past experience. So it's just focusing down on those things in the initial stages and in the way that you want to express that You know, we want to support people developing as assistant directors, but fundamentally we're interested in people as artists in their own right, and that's why we're asking, what do you want to make and why?
Can I just add as well, Sue? Like, I think I'm often guilty when I'm doing application forms, answering those questions, of trying to second guess what it is that a building or an organisation wants to hear, or what check boxes that might be in place. So I'm trying to kind of like target those things. And actually, I think I've personally anyway found it most useful when I've tried to be really honest about it and genuinely answer those questions, for twofold, I suppose. First of all, I don't want to be writing checks I can't cash, right? I don't want to be making promises that when I get to it, I actually have to do. And then the second thing, I suppose, is it's been quite useful to sort of figure out my own practice and what do I think about these things, what are my values. And often I don't get the time, or we don't get the time to think about those things because we're working or doing lots of other things. So I think there is also value in using this application as a way to focus in your thinking about the wider world and your own practice, as much as it is about applying for this opportunity.
We've had a question about access needs and an access rider. Would someone need to make it clear about their access needs from the expression of interest stage, or would that be something that they would disclose later on in the process?
I think for me, it's whatever you feel most comfortable doing. I think if you feel like you're able to be really open and honest about it, and something you want to have a conversation with us about it, I think that's great. And it's useful for us to know, but at the same time, it's certainly not a prerequisite. And if it feels like you actually want to talk about it later on, I think that's also good too. I mean, as part of every application process, RTYDS have always committed to kind of meeting the directors for a short conversation after the expression of interest. And that would be that might also be a time for it to come out in conversation if you feel more comfortable doing that, rather than putting something down on paper, because I know these things often aren't quantifiable within 250 words or whatever, and actually sometimes it's through conversation that it might be easier to discuss.
Mm-hmm. Can I just add again, if you would like to put it in an access rider, that's great. Equally, if you only want to disclose at each stage, we are really open to that. It's to do the thing that you feel most comfortable with.
The next question, sticking on the application forms, actually I can answer. Someone's asked if they're available in any of the formats. So on our RTYDS website, we've got it in the application form, the expression of interest form, sorry, in different versions. So that includes large print, screen reader, BSL versions, and there's a version based on the British Dyslexia Association style guide as well. We're also happy to accept them in video and audio format, and if those don't work for you, then just get in touch with us and we're happy to receive it in a format that works for you. So the next question is about experience. Someone's asked, what kind of experience do we want someone to have had going into the residency? So what stage of their directing career do we think that they should be at?
We try to answer that on the website, and it's really difficult trying to give levels of experience. And I think everything can only be a guideline, and you will know if this is right for you now, and that's not for us to presumptively make that decision for you. I think it would be useful if you've made some work. That can be within a participatory context or community context. You might have worked with your fellow actors of your peer group, or you might not. You might have worked in a community applied capacity. That's brilliant. But I guess that you're on a journey of thinking you are a theatre maker, that you want to be a director, you want to make work. We say 18 months, again, sometimes, especially during the pandemic, what you might have managed to do in 2019 in 18 months, in 2020, 21, it's been much harder. And anyway, it can be that everybody progresses at different speeds, given their work-life circumstances, given their artistic development. So we're just trying to give an idea. I guess it's for those that might consider themselves still early in their development. Although, some people never stop evolving. Hopefully none of us do. But it might be that you're really still interested in assistant directing, because that is what a lot of this opportunity is will engage in. So that still has to be something that for you, that you're going to learn, and it's going to be great to be sitting in other people's rehearsal rooms and also being part of a building and understand everything that goes in to make those theatres as successful and vibrant as they are.
And would someone be eligible if they had an MA, a theatre-related MA, because they may not have had the opportunity to do like a specific placement at a theatre during that MA, so would they still be able to apply?
It's it's a tricky one, isn't it, in terms of all the things that weren't quite fulfilled in terms of sort of educational establishments, commitments to people, and sort of everyone's plans have sort of gone out the window. So in terms of whether or not you had the opportunity to do a placement at a theatre during MA, I guess that would be part of a consideration, but it'd be part of many considerations, just as, you know, someone who has a theatre-related MA is eligible to apply, but would just be one small part of the many considerations that take place when we think about who sort of the kind of directors that might feel right for these particular theatres at that stage of their career. It's also, I guess, about our sort of want and ethos of to champion sort of underrepresented voices who may not have had the opportunity to do an MA or go to university or take part in mainstream education. So that's something that, you know, I think we as an organisation are really keen to support those kind of artists and to kind of develop those artists. And so it is in no way are we saying that if you have an MA you can't apply, but equally at the same time, you know, I think it's a tricky balance between where opportunity goes and how we are, I guess, more industry-wise able to sort of provide equity for people, you know, and make sure that we're able to support lots of different kinds of people from lots of different backgrounds. That's a bit of a woolly answer. Sue, I don't know if you have more clarity.
No, I think it's good. I mean, we're not trying to shut anything down. We're just trying to make it evident that we're trying to create different career paths, different opportunities, different access points. So it's not to dismiss anybody as being eligible or ineligible. It's just about indicating that we're really looking at that and the different opportunities available to people.
The next question is, how are the decisions made about which theatre the successful director will be placed at? Because obviously there's 3 residencies this time round. So how are those decisions made?
Again, it's really complex and really simple in lots of different ways. So that if there is for any reason that you can only elect to go to one theatre, that might be because of housing issues, caring responsibilities, connections to particular locations in terms of support systems, all of that, you should let us know. I think the one thing that we suggest, but again, this is recognising that not everybody can flexibly move around the country, is that you open yourself up to the possibility of as many of those theatres as you can. You might think initially that, oh, you know, that theatre isn't of interest to me, but I really kind of connect to that theatre's values or aesthetic. But actually, if you can come into it with an open mind, you might find yourself surprised or challenged to kind of connect to a theatre that you might not have initially thought of. What we tend to do is that obviously the individual does have impact in terms of where they might prefer to go, and that's all kind of evolved through the process. But when you make an application, we'd very much advise that you don't necessarily specifically focus it towards one of those theatres, but talk more, as Anthony said, just about yourself as an artist, what's of interest to you, and not try and second guess or focus yourself down to one of those particular theatres. At that stage, at this stage, that's not necessarily what we're interested in. We're just in a much wider sense of who you are. And also the other way to think about it is these are kind of 4 artistic directors and artistic teams that you are beginning to have a relationship and a dialogue with. So if you only focus your attention on one of those theatres, those other artistic directors won't get to know you maybe as openly or honestly as they might.
What is the process if someone can only go to one of the theatres, if they have caring responsibilities or, you know?
They should just let us know, and that we completely take that into consideration, and therefore we will run the process according to that person's needs.
Mm-hmm. So someone's asked, do they need to live in the town or city that the residency is taking place in, which I guess we've already answered, but they've asked if there would be the option of commuting, which I guess is a different question. Would they be expected to move to that city, or could they work flexibly?
I think we're trying to approach things in a more flexible way, especially after the last 18 months, has kind of shown us that people can work remotely. I would say that, you know, there will always be periods of this opportunity where it will be important to be close to the theatre, and in particular I'm thinking of when you're assisting on a show, which is a really key and crucial part of this opportunity. You know, with long rehearsal days, and especially when you go into tech and previews, it won't always be practical to be traveling long distances in order to kind of get to work and then get home, if nothing else because you'll be really knackered. And so actually, you know, there might be times and periods where you do really have to be present on site, and there might be times when you could be, because of, you know, the caring responsibilities and the things that we've mentioned, that you could be elsewhere. And that's something that we're really open to discussing with the director and the organisation, and trying to figure a way that we can kind of make things work.
So if it comes to someone having to relocate, do we have any support or advice available?
There is a small but nominal amount of money that we provide in terms of relocation, and obviously we'd ask the theatres really to be there as a support system as well, to suggesting where to find accommodation, where to look, connections. So yes, we would hope to be there to help with that relocation.
Someone's asked if they need to already have a relationship with the theatre, with any of the theatres, because obviously it's the ADs that make the decisions at the end of the day, but do they need to have known them before?
No, neither. You don't need to have known the theatre or the artistic directors. It's, you know, it's an opportunity to meet new people, right? Both for you guys and for us and for those organisations. And I think we should embrace that collectively.
But equally, if you have got a relationship, that's not a problem either.
And there's some questions about the residency itself. So someone's asked if the residency would be full-time, like 5 days a week, or is there any flexibility for those? For example, if they want to stay in part-time jobs for security, or if they have some freelance commitments that have been pushed back due to the pandemic.
Again, we just try and be as flexible as possible to the individual, recognizing that, you know, it's difficult being a freelance artist. Indeed, you can't give up that kind of consistent work that kind of has sustained you over a period of time. Equally, there might be projects that you've got. Maybe this is an opportunity to link it to the theatre that you're working in. I think we just have to take all of that on an individual basis and work it out so it works both for the individual and the organisation. I guess, you know, in some ways, there's a hope that that person really becomes embedded in the organisation and becomes a really vital kind of cog in the wheel. So we just have to make sure that there's enough time to make it work for that person, but there might be possibilities of extending it so that it's still the same amount of time in the kind of out of an 18-month period, but that it's just about the quality of the experience rather than the actual kind of makeup of how it works.
And would there be opportunities or any time set aside to work outside of the 18-month residency contract if they wanted to work with other organisations or theatres or groups or anything like that?
I guess similar to Sue's answer to the previous question, I think it is, you know, what we're trying to create are bespoke opportunities. And, you know, with that, there will be circumstances which come up and opportunities that come up that, you know, might be able to be tied in with the 18-month placement. But I think that was a conversation that sort of would happen at the point in which it does. And, you know, it's in no way are we saying, no, it can't happen, or you should be going and finding those things. It's let's see what happens and try and figure it out together.
And how much directing or theatre making will actually be involved in the 18-month residency? Will the director get to direct a piece of work in the theatre, or does it depend on the host venue?
It does. In terms of how much you get to make yourself, that'll depend on the venue, the theatre. But what we've asked all of the theatres is to commit to the individual with them for 18 months gets to make a piece of work. And that's a piece of work kind of across any of the broad spectrum of the work that they make. But like I say, we really want to provide assistant opportunities in order to people to strengthen and develop their craft. But ultimately, we're kind of really there to provide opportunities for directors and theatre makers to realise what they want to make and how they want to make it and become the artists that they want to be.
So in terms of making that work, would there be the opportunity to make their own work?
That's what I mean, Manli. Yeah,
they
get to make a piece of work. Sorry, I wasn't very clear. Apologies.
Do they get holidays as part of the residency?
You do get holidays as part of your placement and opportunity. Obviously, when you take those holidays, will have to be in conversation with your host organisation. You know, in terms of their programming schedule and what shows are coming up when. And no doubt, when you get there, there'll also be things that you really desperately don't want to miss, and there'll be natural gaps in the kind of annual cycle that you'll be like, oh, actually, nobody's doing anything at this moment in time, so now maybe is a really good time for me to take a holiday. I can't remember exactly how many days you get, but you do get holidays. I know Gina is Gina Fletcher, who's our exec director, is a participant, and I know that she'll be sort of shouting and screaming at the laptop, being like, "It's however many days."
It's probably 25. Let's say it's 25.
It'll be on our website for sure if you look on the 18-month residency page. What support will the directors get from us at RTYDS during the placement?
What we have done in the past that's worked really well is we'll bring the 3 resident assistant directors together. We'll have a chat through sort of looking at expectations, looking at objectives, kind of what they'd like to achieve from the 18 months. So we establish a relationship with them and encourage them to establish a relationship with each other so that they can be a really vital support group to each other. And then we keep in touch on a regular basis in terms of when they start, checking in, and again, bring the 3 together. So what we hope to be is kind of running parallel alongside the theatres in terms of those important relationships that they're establishing. And then we're here as well to support through the whole 18 months.
And carry on with the support question. Someone's asked, would there be any support with childcare?
I think that support with childcare comes in many ways, right? And I don't, and I could be wrong, but I don't think we're able to sort of financially support any childcare. But I think we are able to be there pastorally, and obviously in conversation with the organisation, arrangements can be made depending on individual circumstances in order to kind of help that and support that as well.
What about if someone is still kind of shielding? How will that work with the residency?
I think, again, we talk with the organisation to ensure that it is entirely possible for that person to get impactful, beneficial experience, and then we just work on it on a person-by-person basis. And again, in terms of interviewing and that process, that will be really responsive to the personal circumstances of the individuals that we meet, both in the general meetings that we have, but also through the interview process as well.
Thinking about the other potential implications of COVID, so if there was going to be another lockdown, or if there was a local lockdown, for example, does that mean that the whole process would have to be postponed or halted? What would happen?
I guess over the last sort of 16, 18 months, we've all got really good at having a plan A, B, C, and D, and so on, and been really good at responding to the requirements and restrictions placed upon us. And that would be the same here. I think it would depend on the individual and the organisation. And I think it would be a conversation with RTYDS and yourselves and the organisation as a threesome to kind of discuss what is best for the director and this particular opportunity. Over the last 18 months, some of our 18-month residencies have been paused and picked up at a later date, and others have kind of continued throughout. So it really does depend on the person and the organisation and the individual needs.
So after the residency, after the 18 months, what happens? Are they guaranteed a job at the theatre?
No. We very much hope that there's a continuing relationship, and actually quite a lot of the 18-month residencies have continued to have really close relationships to go back to do work. Some have continued as associates or been moved into those roles or roles created for them. It's not a guarantee at all, but I guess there is a desire for the theatres to take part in order to create connections and long-term partnerships with the individual sort of residents that they have. But sadly, there's no guarantee. I guess the relationship with RTYDS is also continued in that we continue to talk in terms of focus groups and pay people for their advice and take part in the 18-month recruitment and meeting with directors. So we hope that there's a kind of ongoing relationship. And sometimes for those that have been through the 18 months, we offer particular focus workshops or kind of discussion groups that continue to keep us and them connected.
Brilliant. That was the end of our questions that were submitted in advance. I don't know whether you want to take a 5-minute break and then people can think of questions and then drop them in the Q&A box, and we'll go to that after the break. Is everyone happy with that? Well, so if we come back at 7 minutes past, everyone. Thank you. Hello everyone. Hopefully everyone's back from the break. Before we get onto the submitted questions, I have an answer about the holidays. It depends on the venue, but it will be a minimum of 28 days per year, which is inclusive of bank holidays. So over the 18 months, it'll be 42 days. You don't have to trek onto our website and look for that, because there's your answer. So I'm going to start on the questions that we've got in the chat box. Someone has asked, if you've recently been fortunate to have had contact with a venue and worked as part of the creative team, are you less likely to be considered? Because is this aimed at people that haven't had that closeness with a venue recently or even ever?
I don't think so. I think, again, it's, you know, it's in the sort of, in your sort of application expression of interest that and sort of we will take that into account, but it's also a fresh start in many ways. You know, I think it wouldn't count against you in any way, shape, or form. That's a short answer. I shouldn't babble.
Is there anything you want to add, Sue?
No, just as Anthony said.
Brilliant. So we've asked one of the questions about a regional space that the directors or theatre makers would want to make work in. Could this be a London space if they're a London-based artist and only likely to be making work in London?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess if it's a space that you know is the point of the question, really, so that you're envisaging where it takes place, so that it's something that you are maybe hoping in the next, year, 18 months that you'll be doing. I guess the fact that you're London-based and don't necessarily connect to theatres outside of London is just something to consider and think about. How you might express your interest in the theatres, which are all outside of London and therefore have a very different ecology that they work within, is maybe just try and talk to some people that do work outside of London or have worked outside of London, or do your own research just so you get a sense of what that means and the difference from being in London and outside of London. There's not a huge kind of difference, but there are sort of different focuses. So I guess choose a space that you know is definitely the best choice.
And similar to that, so the question is about a piece of work that they'd like to make in the next 12 to 18 months. How much detail should be given in that answer?
I guess it's useful to capture, it's useful to tell us what it is, first and foremost. And then it's useful to give us a sense and flavour of why that piece of work and what you would choose to, why it is that you want to do it and what you would want to do with it, I suppose. And, I think everyone communicates that differently. It might be quite sensory in the way that you describe it. It might be about the images that we might see or the sounds we might hear. It might be about the smells that we smell, or it might be about the ideas that are running through the piece of work that you want to discuss. It might be about the sort of your particular reimagination of something which feels very well known or very traditional. You might have a radical reworking of it, and it might be about sharing that new vision with us instead.
But I think the thing is we've given a sense of how many words, so we're not asking you to kind of really think or give us a huge in-depth idea of it. It's just like, it's to pique our interest. I guess when you're telling us about the work, what would be the thing that would want us to find out more? So there's no way you can cover everything. You're just giving us a snapshot, but give us a snapshot that makes us want to find out more.
Someone's asked, does my experience taking part in masterclasses and observing rehearsal processes count towards anything because it shows their development?
Yeah, of course, that's brilliant. It just demonstrates that you're kind of learning, you're interested in developing further, you're kind of absorbing from other people's practice. Some of it you might be kind of accepting, others you might be rejecting. But yeah, I think doing all of that just demonstrates, like with anything, isn't it? You're just kind of keen to learn, and you're increasing your skill set, your understanding, and your interest generally.
I've got a question that it could relate to the CV workshop that we're going to be doing as well, but I think it might be useful in this session as well. Someone's asked, is is non-directing experience within organisations valid? So they might have experience in admin or supporting roles. What kind of CV do we want to see? Do we want to see a director CV, a regular CV, a combination? How do they represent their creative practice and kind of other transferable skills that they can use within the residency?
Can I answer that one, Anthony?
Go for it.
I think, you know, we want a rounded sense of who you are and what experience you've got and how that all feeds into each other. I guess this isn't an admin role, though. It's not, that isn't the measure by which we'll kind of necessarily kind of connect to you on. So everything that you do, and I think as an industry, we can get really sort of siloed in terms of, you know, you can only be a director or a writer, but, you know, people are really massively complex, creative beings. So I think all of the thing that you want to, who are you, completely bring in terms of how you might want to lay it out in your CV, how you might want to express yourselves. But I guess there are particular maybe aspects that you might want to amplify more than others. So just think about the things that are most compelling, most excite you most about this opportunity, and what experience you had feeds into that. So bring your full self. Just think of which aspects of your full self might be the most relevant in this context.
That's
Let
all.
somebody.
That's all the submitted questions that we've had in the Q&A box. I don't know whether you guys want to wait 5 minutes and see if anything else comes to mind for the people who are watching, but that's what we've had so far.
I think there's anything else. Nothing springs to mind from me, Manli.
That's okay. We can move on to the CV workshop portion if you'd like.
Sure.
Because we do have some questions that were submitted specifically about the CV workshop. There were people who, I don't know whether you have something already planned for this, Sue, but some of the questions, do you want me to run through some of the questions?
Well, I think what might be good is if you could run through the questions, and then I've got 2 things to show that might be useful in terms of particular kind of ways to present your CV. But it is just to say, do the thing that most represents you. I think there's lots of different advice about CVs, and I've probably been guilty about giving some of it, which is basically, this is just a snapshot of you. Don't try and include everything, but just the things that you feel best represent you in this moment, relevant to this particular opportunity.
I've just had a question. Sorry to keep jumping about, but I've just had a question pop up in the Q&A box. So I'm going to rewind a little bit. With the project that they want to develop over the next 12 to 18 months, is it a problem if it's something, if they're writing something that's location specific? So, for example, if it's within a very specific community in a very specific part of the country.
The thing about the piece of work that you make will be chosen in relationship with the organisation. So, you know, it's part of their programme. So it's not you having the opportunity to make whatever you want. It's the thing that between you and the organisation that you decide is the thing for you to make, that suits both the programming of the organisation, the theatre, and also your interests. So it comes from an iterative process of talking about the things that excite you, what the organisation's trying to deliver, who it's trying to engage in terms of its audiences and wider artistic community. So it's all done through a dialogue, not through you kind of deciding that this is the thing that you want to make, or indeed the theatre saying, this is what we're going to give you.
Manli, is, I guess, can I just ask, is that a difference between what you would make in an organisation, or are we talking about the expression of interest?
Well, I was going to ask whether if in the expression of interest, they should maybe have that in mind, maybe about the organisations, or in the expression of interest, should they just do whatever they want to do?
Completely jumped in. Anthony's got a very good question. Yeah, in the expression of interest, we're just interested in the thing that you want to make. It's not relevant to whether it fits with any of the theatres. It's just about the thing that is exciting you at this moment. Thanks, Anthony. Sorry, that was a not listening to the question answer.
Right, I'm going to go back to the CV workshop stuff. What I'll do is if someone does have any 18-month residency questions at the end, we can come back to it right at the end. But if we just do the CV workshop stuff first, some of the questions that we had submitted in advance were, some people wondered how they should lay out their CV, kind of the ideal length of the CV, what info we want to see, what the theatres are expecting or wanting to see in the CVs, kind of about, someone said, when working in multiple disciplines within the theatre, do we want it to be formatted chronologically or by discipline? What's the best way to reflect like digital work and non-directing work? And one big one is, should they include work experience not related to the art, which was kind of part of the question that was asked before, but they're the ones that were submitted in advance. You just keep in mind when to cover.
Thank you. Do you want to show the pro forma? Would that be okay?
Yeah.
The one from the form rather than the filled in one.
Okay.
Thank you.
The example from the 18-month residency pack, is that the right one?
Yeah.
There we go.
So I think, first of all, the thing to emphasize is that there is really no kind of rules by which you should do your CV. I guess it's the way that you feel the information you want to convey is best conveyed. So everything that I'm going to say is my opinion. Anthony might disagree and chip in, and that's brilliant because, like I say, there is no single answer to this. But I think the thing that you're doing through your CV is telling us as much as you can in as concise and clear way as possible. So for me, these are the things that we've suggested to you, which is obviously you need your name, a telephone number, and an email address. And also if you've got Twitter or what's that other one? Instagram, then again, or a website, these are different ways that you can kind of provide access to a wider knowledge of who you are. It is amazing how many people don't put their telephone number or email on their CV. And obviously if you don't, it means that people can't contact you. And this is a bit like your kind of calling card. Again, what you can do is do a brief overview or biography, because it might be that you've had different kind of professions. You might have different careers that you've explored. And it's just an opportunity to give a bit of a brief overview. You might be an artistic director of a company, you might be an associate of a company. And that's quite hard to put in a more linear way. So it's just an opportunity at the top. And again, we've suggested maybe 50 to 100 words in that section. And if you're doing an audio or video response, then maybe about 2 minutes, just as an overview. And then the way that we've suggested is that you maybe have directing theatre making experience, you're directing with young people or the community, then your assistant directing, other experience, and also then education and training, and then your skills. And I guess, again, if you've done more than directing, you might do writing, you might also, work in online work or in terms of film. All of that you can just sort of lay out in different titles. And I think by separating it out, it just gives a visual picture of everything that you've been engaged in, whether that's film, theatre, kind of digital, dance. It just means that visually it's very easy to take in at a glance. And the way I've suggested is that it's kind of, I think the year is really useful. 2015 when you did something, what the show is, who the writer is, where the theatre or venue that it's taken place in, and also the length of run. And I guess the length of run is useful because it gives a sense of, did it run for 2 performances? Is it actually that's still something available online? Did it actually have a 3-week run? It just gives a different sense of the work that you're making. So what I've done is an example of what it might look like. And again, this is just for you to kind of riff off and see if it works for you. Could you put the other one up, Manli, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'll just give you a chance to read that. So I'll stop talking and I'll just let you read it. So we can give, if you want a bit more time to read that, then let us know. I'll just say a few things, and then in the chat or the Q&A, just let us know if you've got questions or would like to spend some time reading it. I guess I would advise, where possible, is that it's a page long. You know, if it runs to 2 pages, that's fine, but don't try and put everything on. It's not a kind of full and accurate record of everything that you've ever done in your life. It's to give an overview of the relevant information for this particular application. I think it's really useful if you have referees on there, the people that would know your work, that might be able to speak to what you've done and know you and maybe have worked with you. And again, just provide who they are, or maybe the relevance to why they know you or why they'd be happy to give you a reference, and then just an email address by which we can contact. You don't need to give kind of more than just an email, and obviously make sure that those people are happy to be contacted on your behalf. And that's not just for the 18-month residency. I mean that in terms of CVs generally. Also, there was one other thing that sprung to my mind, and it's now just fallen out my mind. Yeah, the other thing is, don't put too much information on your CVs. They shouldn't have your age, your date of birth, your full address, because all of that can lead to identity theft. So just be careful what information you are sharing, so that you are safe in terms of GDPR. I'm trying to think if I've answered all of the questions in that.
I sometimes, for each of those sections, so for example, the directing and theatre making section, I might make a little box using the kind of grid function on Microsoft Word, just because for me, find it easier to see it when it's kind of portioned up, I suppose. But I think that might just be the way my brain works. It might not be best or easiest for you, but that's something I would consider doing often, because I think sometimes titles are different lengths and sizes, and it knocks everything out of sync, and that really stresses me out. So by having a grid and boxes, it means I can kind of contain everything, and it feels more uniform than it might be otherwise.
Yep, but then you can take that out so that the people reading it don't have to see it, because again, too much information in the eye can kind of be distracting. What I've done in this is suggested that you can explain what the piece of work is. You don't have to do that, because, you know, if you've been directing Hamlet or you've been making work by a known writer, then that's not always useful. But I've just given these as examples because it can just give a bit of context of what the work is, who you made it with, why you made it, and it just gives a bit more of a flavour of the sort of work that you might be making. And again, it could be that, you know, you want to say it's work in progress, or it was R&D. You, again, just that little line gives you that opportunity to give a bit more background as to the piece of work or the pieces of work that you've been making. Are there any questions that have come up, Manli, in the Q&A bit?
I think we might have a couple. If directing work is upcoming, would you want that to be within the relevant section or in a new section, just to make it very clear?
I think, again, you can put, you know, if it's upcoming assistant directing or upcoming piece of work, I think you can put that in the relevant section and just indicate that, you know, it's not yet realized. I don't know, different people have got different opinions in that. If it's something that's you've not actually yet done it, it can feel a bit weird to put it on your CV, because CVs are what you have done as opposed to what you're going to do. But again, I think that's to your discretion. Put in what you feel, yeah, you're exciting to share with people.
And in response to something that you said earlier, is it okay if people cherry pick the projects that feel the most appropriate, despite, even if they've had other projects that have happened more recently, should they still cherry pick?
I think, again, it's not an accurate record of everything you've ever done in your life. Some of the things you've done, you might not feel kind of represent you fully. They might have been things that you did for a whole variety of reasons. So I think it's about giving as full an indication of you, your work, what interests you, who you've worked with, where you've worked. So yes, choose the things that you are most indicate who you are as an artist.
Someone's asked, is it best practice to include quotes from press about their work?
Oh, that's a really, really brilliant question. In some ways, I think that's down slightly to taste, and in ignoring the 18-month residency, I'd also say who you're applying to. Different organizations use press quotes and press measure of success in different ways. So I always use the example, if you look at the old Vic, they tend to use press a lot. If you look at the young Vic, they never mention the press in terms of, other than kind of on posters. So again, I think it's, you know, which press have said what about you, and what do you think that demonstrates, or what is it expressing in terms of who you are as an artist? So sometimes, for me anyway, I like to get to know people rather than what the press think or what anybody else thinks. I want to know what they've done, who they've done it with, and then from that, you know, we'll be meeting everybody. So this CV is just a beginning of an indication of who you are, and then we'll have meetings with everybody, and that can be a much more exciting way of getting to know people, is through themselves and what they say, as opposed to what someone else might happen to say about a show they came to see once.
Someone's asked about devising and creating work collaboratively. Would that count? What section would they put that in? Would that be under directing, or would it be under other?
I guess it depends what kind of work you were making. The fact that it's kind of co-created is brilliant. That doesn't stop it from being, that's why I guess it's directing theatre making. It's the making of the theatre is more important than how you want to qualify or describe that. So again, this is an example of a starting point for you to find the best way to tell us about the myriad and brilliant things that you've been doing. So if that means putting it in finding a different way to indicate that, fantastic. Or if it feels like it fits within directing, theatre making, put it in that section.
And is it okay to include non-professional productions, for example, if they directed a short movie?
I think that's really interesting. I think if at the moment, most of your experience has been kind of making work with your peers or via university, what I'd suggest is if you've got a mix, some of it's at university or part of training that you've done, and you've tended to work with, in the wider sense, non-professionals, those people who are not yet seeing themselves as making a living through theatre, then is to indicate that. I mean, obviously, if it's a piece of work that's co-creation and through participation or applied theatre, then that's professional because you are working as a professional. Whereas at the time you're making things because you're still training or you're in full-time education, it would just be really useful, you know, while at university or while at college, or you know, it could be that you've been doing some really interesting work with an amateur dramatics company, and therefore kind of just indicate that, so that sometimes there's a difference in terms of the skills that you've amassed and also the people that you're working with, by just indicating what the nature of that piece of work. And it's not to give it different levels of importance. It's just working with people who've studied for 3 years to be an actor. The skills needed is different than if you're working with a group of people for whom this is something in addition that they do to the professional experience that they have as doing different work. That doesn't make sense. I think it does just about make sense.
It does. A really practical question. What is the ideal length of a CV? Because obviously the ones that we've just shown there are one side of A4, but kind of where's the limit? We've obviously asked people to cherry pick like their work, but yeah, obviously I think we want to see like 10 sides.
It's a page. As I said earlier, it should be a page. If you maybe go to 2, kind of just about, but really at this stage, it's about not feeling that you need to give too much information. It's and it's not necessarily even cherry picking. It's just the things that feel most. I'm trying to say not the word relevant, because I have relevant is not a useful word. The examples of what you have done that most speak to this particular opportunity.
I often think of CVs as telling a story, you know, and what's the story that you want to tell us about yourself? And I think I have found it useful anyway to kind of have that in mind when I make new CVs for different opportunities or projects, because it's how do I best, it's the telling a story of myself and my professional life, work life anyway.
Yeah.
That's all the questions we've had in the Q&A box. I'm just whizzing through the questions that we got given in advance just to make sure that we've answered everything. We kind of answered what the theatre is expecting to find, kind of just an overview of them as an artist. Yeah, I think we've answered everything. Is there anything that pops to mind for you two to add? Anything that might be useful?
I think it's just to reiterate what Anthony said really kind of early on, which is I know it's really hard because there is a natural instinct to try and second guess what either you think we want or the theatres want. But I think as far as you can, and I know this is a really easy thing to say, and I recognise that, is to be true to what you want to make, why you want to make it, and use the opportunity to dig into that, as Anthony says, to think about the question of the work that you want to make and why you want to make it, and which audience you want to speak to and why. Because I think, you know, in some ways you can try and second guess us, but actually the only thing that you can be really true to is what you believe in and what's important to you and the stories that you want to tell. And I just think that's a really strong starting point.
I also think that sometimes when I sit down in front of an application for anything, like there's a pressure to write in a really sort of like academic way, and to be really kind of, yeah, I don't know. There's like a sort of like work speak or essay speak that I think sometimes I fall into, and actually I don't enjoy that. I don't like that, and so for me, like expressing myself, like Sue says, in a way that feels truthful and accurate for me is the thing that I have found most liberating and most helpful. And also, it might be through a voice recording or a video recording instead that you feel more able to kind of express your values and your sort of your wants and who you are as a theatre director or maker. And so I think, I know we talk about that on the website as well, but we do mean that, you know, and we're not expecting people to write essays. We're expecting people to communicate in the way that best suits them.
I've got someone who's asked a question which actually is really useful. They've asked if we can give a quick oversight into the process following the expression of interest, which we haven't spoken about yet.
So we're asking for an expression of interest, which is the 3 questions and then a CV. And then from that, we will meet everybody that expresses an interest. And that means that it's a 10 or 15 minute meeting with everybody, and that can be up to 200 people. We mean that could be myself and Anthony might be meeting people, but also we invite other artists, some who've done the 18-month residency themselves or have got a close connection with RTYDS, who are theatre makers, directors themselves. And in that just means that we get to know people, so it's not just filling in a form or writing an expression of interest. We get to meet people and chat. And then from that, we will then invite up to 100 people to express an interest and answer some more questions. And again, recognizing that this is additional work for people. We'll pay all of the 100 people, up to 100 people we invite to do a full application. They'll be given a nominal fee of £50 just to cover some of their time. And then from that, those 100 further expressions of interest will go to the 3 theatre companies who will read those applications. And from that, we will come up with a short list of 200 directors, theatre makers that will then be met by the 4 artistic directors. So it'll be Northern Stage and Live Theatre together meeting, and then Derby and Curve. So those 3 theatres will each meet as a group of 3, 20 people. And then from the 20, we'll invite up to 8 people to meet again. And then from that, we'll offer opportunities for 3 of the artists to be based in one of those organisations.
That's everything from the Q&A box, unless there are any last minute questions from people. Well, I'll just remind everyone whilst we're waiting that we've got the expression of interest forms on our website. So they're in BSL, large print, screen reader and British Dyslexia Association style. If you want to make an expression of interest, you can do it via video and audio expressions of interest as well. And if that doesn't work for you, please can you either ring us or email us on rtyds@rtyds.co.uk and we can get back to you. Doesn't look like we've had any more in. So if anyone has any other questions that have popped up, again, just email us and we'll be happy to answer. Thank you, Sue and Anthony, for your time there. Also, a massive thank you to Erin and Laura, our BSL interpreters. Just before we finish, a reminder that the deadline for the expressions of interest is Monday, the 14th of June at midday. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Manli.
Thanks, Manli. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.